Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. We're going to continue some of our alla prima studies, and I'm going to show you a different way of doing the landscapes. Now, if you haven't watched some of my landscapes, I did some waterfalls and different types of mountains, pasture land. I did that in the playlist, the Acrylic Landscapes playlist. There's a challenge. I did 12 landscapes, smaller landscapes for you, and you should watch those as well, okay? Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some different ways in which I visualize landscapes. So in those, I worked from a reference photo, and I showed you how to change some of those to make a better painting. Today we're going to create it up here, and to do that we have to do a lot of what we call linear perspective, and I want to teach you that because that's some of the stuff that I noticed that, I'm a big fan of perspective. Let's get that correct right now, okay? And learning perspective helped me so much to make my paintings really get that extra little edge, and I want to show you some of it. We don't have to be great at it, but I want to show you some of it because I use it in rose floral compositions. I use it in everything, okay? It's how we direct a viewer through what we call the visual journey of the painting. So last night I did this one up. It took me a couple of hours because I changed my mind a few times on some things I wanted to do. But I want to show you this, and we're going to be working on edges. We're going to do most of it with a brush. We're going to start it out acrylic, and then I'm going to flip over to a wet in the wet, and alla prima type of do it. We'll do it in, of course, I'll slow down and I'll talk a lot, teach you guys a lot, okay? But this is stuff that you need to learn. You don't just need to watch me just paint something. You need to know what it is that I'm thinking as I'm processing through some of this stuff so that you can learn, that process of creation, okay? So you got to do that. Okay, so what I did is I taped a little piece of paper up here. Now, I do it in my S202 online class, which is what I call the Art of Seeing class. It's a never-ending class. It's one that I teach in all the time, and I'm posting a couple videos each month, and I will do probably for the rest of my life because it is an online class that I think we all learn from each other, but we explore different concepts. Now, inside of that classroom, there's a 9-hour series of lecturing that I do on design, okay? And I learned this from reading a 17th century Dutch book that from the Dutch masters, and it was just fantastic. But you have what we call the weight of design, okay, the weight of an element. And so if I draw a circle right up here like this, see, and then I draw a smaller circle, and then I draw a smaller circle, your eye goes this way. Your eye starts here and goes this way. We know that because of weight, okay? Now, how does that apply? How do these circles apply to landscapes? Just a minute, I'll show you. So I use this in florals. Let's say I want your eye to come in here and see a big flower, and then I'll put a smaller flower, and maybe I want you to trail down. Then I'll take that smaller flower and then make smaller ones out here like this, and your eye trails down, going down, but it definitely sees here. And of course, I tell you in the roses and stuff, wherever we put the center and stuff is the gaze, that causes your eye to go this way. So usually I will trail down opposite the gaze. So I'll put a gaze one way and I'll trail down. That all comes. Now, but in landscapes, it's a little different. And this one I drew up just to help you see this. In landscapes, we have a horizon line, but then we draw on what we call the shape that we use is called the triangle, because this triangle gives you the very best perspective. Now, what is a triangle? This is a triangle. It's the same thing whether you're drawing with roses or circles or anything. It's a triangle. Triangle is your line of movement, okay? So what artists do, and I teach this in landscapes and stuff, but the Art of Seeing is a great class. Those of you that are looking to take a class, do something like that. If we put up a horizon line, even in the painting like this, that we're going to do today, it's an imaginary horizon line. Basically, the horizon is going to be about right through here. This is called the skyline, okay? So this is the skyline. The horizon line would be where the curvature of the earth really is, and it's going to be out about like that. So, but what you do with this stuff is you come in here and we set up these triangles here. And triangles are a line of movement. So if I come in here, if this is my painting, and I just set this triangle up here, your eye is going this way, okay? And what artists do is we set up crossing triangles. So if I cross another triangle right out through here like this, so maybe this is a set of mountains. So I have a lower mountain, and I'll put a higher mountain, kind of like what we're going to do today, crossing over that. That becomes a crossing point right here. So we have one and another one crossing right there. And we can put up bigger ones, other ones up through here. And that, so what it does is it creates what we call linear perspective. The triangles take you on this visual journey winding through your landscape here. I can set up another one and stuff right up through here. Maybe it's a small mountain or trees. Some landscape artists, you know, when I learned back in the 70s, Bill Alexander and everything, he'd always put up mighty tree right here, right up here like this, because a mighty tree, something right here adds another plane of visual depth, pushes that stuff back, and it's a great way to stop your eye from going off that way. It says start right here, go that way through your painting. Sometimes they'll put up onto both sides. When you're looking at perspective, though, okay, let's look at, for a second, you know, linear perspective. What is linear perspective, okay? And linear perspective is, let me just turn this over here for a second. And linear perspective is really using the lines of sizes of things, and as they get smaller as they go back. Well, we know that, right? We know as you go back in a painting, anytime that you go back, or smaller, you're going back. So here's our horizon line. So in linear perspective, what we do is we put up what's called a vanishing point. That's where everything within our design is going to draw into. And let's say, and the greatest way to do it, which I do in a lot of videos show you, is like the little line of a fence post. If I put up a big fence post here, okay, and then I put up a smaller one heading to that linear perspective, what happens is you're going to have a top line and a bottom line. And as you're drawing these fence posts, they stay a little bit wider away from each other, and then they slowly become closer and closer and closer to each other as they get further back like this. And this gives you your depth of perspective going back here like this. Now, I should probably take it up a little bit higher than that, so you don't put a line right into that one. But you get the idea here, okay? So it goes back like this. But what is this shape, guys? What is that shape? Linear perspective, it draws on the triangle, see? So it's how you're going to set up your triangles. And so, you know, we talk about when we're drawing perspective, rectangles, squares, triangles, all that different kinds of stuff. Today, what I'm going to be doing is showing you this landscape. We're going to work on our linear perspective, atmospheric perspective, and drawing on triangles. We're going to sketch from our imagination and build a landscape. Because, like I told you the last one I did, it is really cold, and we're getting 7 inches of snow out there. So, and I could go look at photos like I showed you guys before, but sometimes creating something like I did here right out of your imagination is kind of fun as well. And, you know, you need to have it up here, you know, an idea of it. So you need to look at a lot of them, but it's kind of fun, and I like to do these types of things. So let's talk about, I'm going to have a little bit of water out here, which you don't normally see me have out. I have it right out here off to the side, because I'm going to start out with acrylic. For medium wise, I'm going to put out here some of my extender. This is when I'm going to be doing the oliprime, or the wet on wet portion of the painting. So I'm going to have my extender out. The other thing that I do want to have out as well is the Daravan Open Medium. Okay, Matisse Daravan Open Medium. This works very, very well with the Heritage Acrylics. I love it. Matter of fact, that painting that I did last night, sitting over there, is still wet in and around the water and stuff where I did it last night. And, you know, it's just, it's amazing because I used it pretty thick. And we'll talk about that. I'll show you some of the different things. We're going to have a lot of fun. I'm going to show you a lot of different things of this. And you'll probably need to watch the video a couple of times, okay? And we might, if I go too long, if I get a little too wordy, we might break it up into 2 smaller videos for you, so you can, it's easier to keep track where you were when we do stuff like that. Okay, so I have a 16 by 20 canvas, I'm going to be using my fusion brushes. I like to sketch with a bristle brush, and I'm going to be using that. Color-wise, what I have out here, I'm going to have a little bit more limited palette, except for my blues. I'm going to expand my blues, and I'll talk to you that as we get going. We're going to use yellow oxide, burnt sienna. We use pine green. We're going to use the phthalo blue. Now, phthalo blue I always put closer to the greens because it's a blue-green. This is the ultramarine blue, which I always put next to my violets because it's a blue-violet. This is a pre-mixed color called Sapphire that's in our line, and I don't have very many mixed colors in our line, but I love Sapphire, especially in landscapes and stuff, because it just makes the most beautiful skies, and it's a shortcut color. Now, what is Sapphire? Sapphire right here, if you look at the numbers, those of you in color theory, you know what this means. This is phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, carbon black, and titanium white. That's what those numbers mean, okay? And so it's a nice, already pre-mixed shortcut color, and it's not expensive. Then I have my titanium white out here. Okay, so, and then of course my extender, my open medium, my little cup of water. I'm ready to go. We're going to start out acrylic, and then what I'm going to do is move right over into, I'm going to sketch it first, then I'm going to move right over after I put in some areas of acrylic so it can dry and set. Then I'm going to work into the wet into wet, okay? And that's what I like to do, the way I like to do it. I'm going to take a little burnt sienna. I like to sketch with a burnt sienna or burnt sienna gray, something I'm going to use a lot of into the colors. I'm just going to mix it with a little burnt sienna, a little bit of the sapphire there, and some water. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for my triangles. I'm going to see where I'm going to set that water, which is going to be the edge of the water right here. This is going to really be kind of a vanishing point almost for me right there. And so I'm going to set that edge of that water right about that height, right about in there. I don't like to go right into halfway, so I'm in just low of halfway. 20 inches by 16 inches, so a little bit low of halfway. Halfway's right about there, so about an inch or so low of halfway. I'll do that. I'm going to bring a triangle of rock right out at this side here, and you can see immediately that moves your eye this way. I'm going to stop your eye right in here with another little bit of rock right there. Okay, and this is what I do. And you know, when I drop all these things, you know, if you go back and you study, I love to study Albert Bierstadt. He was one of the Hudson Valley painters, landscape painters. Beautiful. And I just look at his triangles and his set. Of course, he went out, painted nature, and then he changed it when he got back to his studio in New York. He changed the mountains, the height of it, and stuff like that. Like one up in Colorado that I went up to go walk the same trail and looked at the same spot that he painted back in 1890. Look at this mountain and see what he changed from what it is, and he changed quite a bit. Trying to learn what is it the artist is seeing. That's the most important part. What is the artist seeing? Okay? And how you put these all together, there's just 1,000 different ways to put these triangles together for movement, okay? Now, a lot of times what I do, if I have a nice strong horizontal, I'll put in some kind of strong vertical or thrust line, and that's what this one is right here. This is a thrust line, basically, what we call thrust line, and I'm going to drop it down, and I'm going to just stop it short right here. That's going to be this big angled one coming down here like this. This one right here, this triangle that you see back here, is the one that's going to control the depth of our painting, basically, okay? And probably maybe a little lower, somewhere around here. And I'll explain that in just a moment. I'll explain, because we can shove it way back, we can bring it forward. The big, huge traveling triangle that's going to start right up about here, come out almost to the halfway, and then come right back here like this. That's going to be this one right here, okay? That's going to be that area right there, as you put that one in. And so this is what I'm doing. And I visualized this kind of, I wanted this water to kind of like go around the corner and create kind of like a little valley that you see here. I call this painting Spring Melt. I imagine the melting snow. I go up into the mountains all the time this time of year when I'm out into the heartland of the Midwest and into the Rockies. And I love watching the melting snow, taking pictures and seeing everything that's going around and everything. So, and I put a couple of rock features out here. We might, I might change it around. The one thing I give myself as an artist all the time is the freedom never to copy what I did before for a couple of reasons. And my mother, who's a very famous folk artist, Josania, my mother told me this so many years ago. When I was a young teacher way back in 1983, and I finished my first seminar, and I told her, I said, I just feel like I can't paint what I did before. What I feel like I paint by myself in the studio, and then when I stand up in front of everybody, and of course you just like the deer in the headlights, is like two different things, and I feel like I can't copy myself even though I do it, and it gets really frustrating. And she always told me, she says, you will never be able to copy yourself. That's why whenever you create a painting for another time, or when I create a commission painting and then someone else says, I'd like to have that painting, I'll change something about it with the next ones. And all of my buyers, my collectors, know that I change things. I will never completely, because it's so hard to copy. Now you see me do this with photos and stuff, and I'm better at it. But it is one of the hardest things that you can ever do. If you're watching my paintings and you're trying to copy it, it's almost impossible to do. I can't even do it. So I don't. It's my painting. It's paint. It's a board. I'll change it. And let's have some fun and make it your own. And you want to add a few more rocks, that's fine. You know, that's going to be great. That's what it's all about. You know, that's what it's all about. Now, I probably might even that's kind of looks like that you could fall off that and kill yourself. We'll just lower that down just a bit. So this gives me an idea here. And, you know, my problem here when I do all these rocks and stuff is I usually make them all the same size. So we're going to be talking about that. But that gives me my path. And what is my path of my water? Really here is a triangle. And because a linear perspective, it would be wide. The little stream would be wider here and narrower as it goes back. And that's how we do it. Okay. Now, let's go in acrylic. I'm going to use a 1-inch fusion brush. This is our 1-inch larger fusion brush. Okay. And I'm going to use just water here. And I'm going to come in first with the sky that I love to paint. It's a real simple one. Real easy. It's just we go up towards our value 9, right up over here, of our white and the the sapphire. Sometimes a tiny bit of extra of the violet in it. I like to vary it. Sometimes I'll put a bit of the burnt sienna in it to gray it over here. We'll do some of this, and I'm just going to quickly bang this in here, block this all in here like this, and we use water here. Okay, so we'll drop this in here. And many times I always say move your brush when you're doing a sky and everything. It's like I did right over here. You can very just a little bit see the casual movement of the brush. I like your brush to move in all kinds of directions here. That gives it a lot of interest. Of course, here the sky is just going to put back. It's there basically for visual perspective, no more than anything else than that. Let's put a bit of gray. Sometimes I'll even touch a bit of green. Some of the colors I'm going to use into the composition, I like to drop right into the sky, anywhere up into here, grayness. And see, you just move your brush around and that creates the nice atmospherics. It's just a little bit, but you can see over here, well, I was a little heavier right up through there. I got done with the mountain. I took some of my colors and just went boom right up into there. And I just like it when I do that kind of stuff. And, you know, painting, of course, here is quite a bit different. You know, painting in camera with you guys and explaining is quite a bit different than me just slinging paint around in my studio. You know, it's a total different type of feeling because when I'm teaching like this with you guys, I'm more analytical and I tend to stiffen up quite a bit when I do that. I can't quite find the freedom that I can when I'm just up there doing my thing. And just like you'll be watching the video. That's why I always say to you, watch the video through, watch it, listen to everything I'm saying and everything. And then if you go down to paint it, just put me on over there in the corner and just listen. Try to keep up, but you don't necessarily have to because I pause very well. Just hit the pause, okay? But you know where I'm going because you've already watched it. Don't try to paint along with me without watching. I've never done that with any of my study videos. Okay, so this is my sky that's in. I'm not done with it yet. Now, one of the things I do is I start to decide perspective, atmospheric perspective. And this is my area of atmospheric perspective, this back mountain here. So I'll take some of my blue right back here. Atmospheric perspective means it disappears into the background, okay? Now let me show you something here. I can make this mountain sit way back, or I can bring it forward by how much contrast I give it to the sky, okay? And then again, we're also going to have what we call our linear perspective that's going to show up in there, because I'll have trees up here slightly higher than I do trees over here, and so I get so what that does is it shoves that corner further back. But if I take a little bit of my color, let's take some burnt siennas and greens here, maybe a bit of our yellows here. We'll toss this in, loosen this up with some of our sky color. And if I come in here and just say I'm going to, and see what I want you to do is, yeah, I can block that line. I want you to be careful how much we do that. I don't want to do it that much. But I want to keep that line a little softer over here. And I'm just going to kind of block this in, okay? And we'll come over here. We'll put just a bit more color. Now, what you got to do when you're visually seeing this, and see, I do this all the time, flowers, everything, so I always know it, but this is my pure color that's out here without sky. That's what belongs up front. This is what belongs in the back of the painting. It's called atmospheric perspective. So I can come, I always put some over to the side so you can see that. I can come a little bit more. If I want this edge of the hill here to advance, I'll just pull some of this color, but I like to model it in so I get movement here, okay? So I get movement. Some of this will be taken out by sky and, and snow and stuff like that, but I like to have some movement. Now, you see, if I soften here, if I push into while that's wet and soften here like this, I start to shove that corner of the mountain further back. Do you see that? It's going back further around the corner. This is coming forward. So what I'm doing is taking this mountain that's this way, could be horizontal this way, and bringing it off towards you this way. And that's what I did a little bit. Could you do more? Yeah. On here, that's going to be part of your signature. My job is not to say one's better or another. My job is to teach you what happens, to see it, right? To see it. Once we see it, then we can change it. But see, here's my trees back here. These trees in this line, that's the controlling line on how far that mountain pushes back. If I take a little sky color here, let me just put a little extender in this. If I take a little sky color right here like this, and I go right over those trees just a bit. Matter of fact, I do kind of like that, just a bit here, okay? See how that shoves back even more? That pushes that back even more. These come forward just a little bit more. Now, that's a little bit of a jump between those two. So maybe this one could come forward just a touch more, take some of that sky off of that. But you can see, the closer I make this point right here, which is right up really kind of a vanishing point into my landscape, the more I make that vanish, the more depth I'm going to give to my landscape. If I come in here, and if I put this perfect line right up here with real dark colors, I'm now bringing it forward. See, as I put in more color up there, as I put this in darker and darker and darker, and more of a perfect line, I'm now bringing it forward and I'm destroying that atmospheric depth. So I don't want to do that too much here. I want to push in just a little bit here. And you can play with it and try it, okay? So you can see now that just recedes back like that. And you do that with sky. So the closer you make something to the sky, the more it recedes. Let's go right up in here to the front. We'll grab a bit more of these colors. We're just going to model these all up, grab some yellows as well. We're going to grab some grays. I'm just going to model these all up, and I'm going to start in pushing in. See, I want different yellows here, yellows to come off, And we could lighten a bit every once in a while here, and color to come off. The color itself would be a little heavier here, and I'll blur the edges for right now. Just blur those off. Pull some of this color down and around, because I'm painting with acrylic. I'm not doing the wet and wet yet, but I want to create some underlying just movement. That's all I want, is movement, underlying movement here. And so we'll create and move some color here. Let's get a little bit more of our greens and burnt siennas and blues. Will make it more gray here, which I like some of those grays coming in there as well, because we're going to have all kinds of rocks here. But I just want color. That sounds, just some color. And see, if I, for right now, if I put any kind of slightly darker, it'll come in front of that. Of course, we'll control that as we get into the painting here. We'll control that a bit more. But let's just pull some of this down, get some of this right down. Just block it in. And I will, if I feel it's too much the same, I just come back with more colors, blues, grays here. And I'll start, just adding. Sometimes I do this just to kind of sketch where I might want that rock. Here I put a rock, or where I might want a rock shape, I'll head up into some of my grays and casually, just real close. The color's not, it's not a lot of contrast, because you don't want, when you're sketching like this or building like this, you don't want a lot of contrast, because then it becomes harder to change. If I keep the colors real close together, and I can kind of see it, it's up here in my mind a little bit. If I keep the colors kind of compressed and together a bit, it's easier to change, okay? So you don't know where you're going to go with your painting, so you got to keep it a little bit easy to change. So let's just take a little more gray here, and we'll come in here. There'll be that rocky area right in here, one or two of those here. And so a great gray that I use a lot, it's a really easy one to mix, is this sapphire and burnt sienna, about 1-to-1. I just love sapphire for these kinds of things. Now, that's just a touch dark. I could use a bit of light into that. Going just a touch dark, a little quick here. And so I'll set up some of these rock shapes. Now, we're going to talk a lot about calligraphy, brush calligraphy, angles of your brush, moving it and building some of these stuff. Because I wanted to do with you, a lot of you seen some of the seascapes, other things that I do, that I use my scraper a lot. I love the scraper for doing that kind of stuff, and I use my palette knife. But I wanted to, concentrate with you, because a lot of you are having troubles with petaling roses and doing all that kinds of stuff. And roses are no different than a rock. Matter of fact, in the S202 class, I did one thing that was called a rock as a rose. I painted a rock, and next to it I painted a rose. Used exactly the same light source, exactly the same colors, exactly the same thing. If you can see the planes of a rock, you can see the planes of a rose. It's planes, it's perspective and stuff. So, and it's a great exercise. It's a great exercise to help you see. That's the only thing, guys. We can all do this. Everyone can do this. You just got to learn how to see it. And you got to learn the tricks to see it. Okay? So now you can see the atmospheric perspective here. This is coming forward. This is coming forward. As I come forward into the painting, I'll get a little bit darker, in my colors. Maybe I'll flip over to, and you got to get a little cooler. So maybe even on the shadow side over here, add a touch of violet. Let's just come in and just work a bit of this. And we'll just use some water here to just kind of use all of this. We want these colors to just come off. But thinking perspective-wise, this triangle here will be a little darker. My light's coming in here, right up here from top left, which is one of my favorite ways to bring light into a painting. And so I bring that in, so which means this part of the shoreline right into here is going to sit mostly in shadow. Okay, it's mostly in shadow. And then as I come down through here into the front part of it, we'll get a little bit more color here. And let's get some more grays going here. Let's get some more grays. We'll get more lights, darks, grays. We're just going to have lots of color right in through here, and just short movements. We're not building the rocks yet. We're building color, okay? And paint the rocks right out into the water and the water right into the rocks. We're not worried about edges or any of that kind of stuff. All of that can change. Sometimes I'll take a bit of that color right over here so it doesn't get too isolated. But we'll drop some of these in here. We'll have lots of stuff going on here, but I'm just seeing some color. We'll add just a bit of that through the painting here like that. Okay, now what's really going to give you more dimension here is one of your dark gray rock colors is going to be Phthalo Blue and burnt sienna. That's a nice dark rock color. So if I start putting this dark color, you can see right out through here. Of course, I got a lot of paint on this, but if I start, putting in any kind of dark like this will all change. Just drop in some dark so you can see what your dark is. You can see dark colors come forward. Darker colors are less atmospheric. Your atmospheric of your sky up here is value 9. So as we get darker colors right up through here, sometimes just do this. Just get that dark up here so your eye can see that dark, where that dark's going to be, and it'll help it, flow a little bit better. Anytime that you want to create depth between two fields of something, you need that dark, but you don't go back there. You can keep that dark right up into what I call the foreground, midground area, but it doesn't go any further than that. There. What will really pull this forward is, let's go right over here to our phthalo and a little bit of burnt sienna, maybe a bit of our other two blues right in here. Let's grab some. This is one of the darkest areas of our painting. It's right over here. We'll even push into some of these grays, because you do this because water reflects everything around it, rocks and sky and everything around it here. But you see that, so this is going to be nice and dark. And then what happens as you go further back, it slowly becomes more like the sky. That's what happens to it. So your water is going to become more atmospheric, and depending on the angle that you're looking at it, a lot of it has to do with your view angle, and we study that in landscapes. And it's not just go out there plein air and paint what you see, because sometimes you can't. You've got to be able to go back to the studio and adjust your painting, and so you need to know all these rules. But because of view angles and stuff, we know lighter water goes into the back, and of course it becomes more atmospheric. And so we just block some of this in. This is a great way to block in and check your painting to see if it's going to work, color-wise, and it gives you kind of like a few benchmarks of where you're going to go with the painting here. And we want to keep that a little bit more sky right back there for right now. And we'll do all the angles of waters and ripples and all that kind of fun art stuff here in just a little bit. Right now I just want to keep this kind of loose and moving here. And so you can see it. So you can see, the dark colors come forward, sky colors there going back, and you can get a good idea. Then what you do is you always step back, take a look at it, step 6-8 feet back, whatever you're going to be displaying it at, in your home or your studio or gallery, whatever you're going to be displaying at, set it back and take a look at it, and you can go from there to adjust it from there. Okay, all right. Now, so you can see, even with just the water and working with a lot of paint, I'm working with a lot of paint, and to put this on, this will stay wet. This stays wet for a long time, even working with just the acrylics. Okay, so now let's go in though, and what I'm going to do is, I have a pretty good idea. I know pretty well here, where my dark colors are going to go here into rocks and all of this kind of stuff. I have an idea. Sometimes I'll refine these a little bit more so I can see a little bit more of that coloring and stuff. It all depends. This is these kind of river scenes and stuff like this. I've painted hundreds of them. I don't really need to use too much of a reference. I kind of know where I'm going to go with it. But if you don't, you step back and you can do a little bit of refinement here and there before you go into actually painting the painting, okay? So now we got a good map. We've got a good map with some nice benchmark colors of where we got to go. I like this particular part of the painting here. Now I'm going to paint for interest. And there's a couple ways to do this when you're painting for interest. Basically, with a lot of things, and a lot of the masters, when you're talking about autopriming and everything, they say stay as large a brush as possible, as long as possible, okay? And you do that so that you can keep your detail. I mean, the detail stays away, especially back here. But, you know, you can see back there, I have a lot of little detail, a lot of stuff going on. But I have a lot of stuff going on up here into the front here. But my colors, my tones and everything are pretty soft. And so I kind of designed to a technique. There's all kinds of techniques, whether you're going to paint super realism or if you're going to paint very, very painterly. When I do autopima, those of you who have gone over to the website and looked on the thing, is called painterly. Painterly is you leave the brush strokes, the brush marks, so it's a painting. It is not a realistic interpretation of copying something and making it look like a photograph. Those, you know, that takes a lot of time for, you know, some work and small brushes. But I do like the painterly thing here because it's a painter. And, you know, this, of course, painterly became very popular during the Victorian times and following that into the Impressionism, in basically painting Impressionism, and which is where I am. I'm an Impressionist more than anything else. I love it. I'm going to keep it painterly. So I want to just move color. So I'm going to key off of everything that I do here for right now is going to be very close to this sky color. So I want to keep it up, right up into my values, right up in here. So I want to move some more tones around here. And as I move this is my 1-inch brush. As I start to move this around, you see I've dirtied that brush, and see how much different colors start to come off here. I'm just going to be a very painterly, loose way of putting this here. But I want to give the angle and movement to the triangle. So I like to use the fusion brush down like this and pull the brush so I can get some of those angles and stuff like that help get that triangle movement like that. But it puts on all this other little stuff, all these colors, so I don't overmix. Okay, and I'll step back and I'll move my brush, and sometimes I'll come in and use the tip and just work it a bit like this, especially if I want an area to kind of soften out. I don't always go one direction because it'll go stiff, so because you're going to have other little things, rocks and angles and stuff like that. But I'll break that, okay? I'll break that edge there. And this is what I did last night when I did that edge back up there. I pinch wiped my brush and just rinsed out that just a bit. And I'm going to take some of my sapphire, dirty sapphire with this, the light color. It's right here, because I wasn't sure exactly when I go paint this, just how much I want this to recede or, you know, to set back or whatever. And I picked up color, and then I just took that right up into the sky. And that creates a bridge between my sky and my back area there, and brings them closer to, even more close together, because the colors of the mountain are in the sky and the sky is in the mountain. So that brings them closer together. And then I just kind of break these all up. You know, like I showed you before, stab art. I call this stab art. I just kind of stab around a little bit and create some rocky movement. Not going in specifically back there and creating too much, because it might be too much. Now you can go back in any kind of sapphire and burnt sienna, but keep it lighter in value. Keep it right up in here, 7, 8, 9, right in there. You can tap some of this, put in some verticals here to vertical marks. We can go just a touch darker here towards that 7 here, and you can create you know, the idea of a little rocky edge or something like that. Okay, we'll do more about that. We'll do more with that in just a minute. But one of the things I did do, and I just want to show you this too, is sometimes I'll come in and I'll put in a contrast color to see, and again, this is my benchmark. I'll take pine green and burnt sienna, one of my favorite painting tree kind of colors. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of blue sky and stuff to it. If you want it to stay wet, poke into your extender there. And I'll come up here and I'll use just a corner of this bigger brush and start to create some tree shapes here, just like that. And then just tap across them a bit. But, you know, use these, use the corner of the brush. The corner of a bigger brush creates a softer line than going to a smaller brush. You save that smaller brush for small things up in your detailed areas. And so this is something you learned, you know, if any of you studied Sargent's landscapes and stuff that he did, and everything. He's used that big brush and use just corners of it and stuff to create some of those interesting marks. Now you can darken that with a little ultramarine or a little bit of blue, but you just want some mottled color to come through there. And I use just a corner. I'll pinch wipe a little bit of that color off of here. And I'll use just a corner here to create some other little marks for some other little trees. Sometimes I just kind of push them around. It all depends on how close I want those or how far away I want those to be into the painting. Sometimes I'll spend more time on it. Sometimes I just do little whispers. Sometimes you put these on as just little whispers and then you can come back and develop them later. And then further back here, I'll get a little bit more atmospheric. If you want these to really recede back, put a few here, and then also think the few back here have to be a bit smaller. Does that make sense? So they have to be a little bit more atmospheric and a little bit smaller back there if you want them to recede back, okay? And I came to bring this kind of hill a little bit more forward. I'll grab some of my colors and stuff here, and I brought this part of the hill a little farther forward with some good color marks, blues, burnt siennas, yellows. So you pick up some of those other colors in here, and I like those right up to there. Now the higher you tap up, and we'll set the angles up there in just a minute, but see the different kinds of movement. Now don't go in, and this was the hardest thing for me to do when I was doing impressionism and landscapes. You're painting for shapes and color, areas, shapes, and colors. You don't go in there and make anything back there perfect because you pull it forward. Does that make sense? You put on blurry color, just color and movement, because the way in which it works is if I use these colors, these greens and stuff like that, and then I use them up here, all I have to do is make one or two trees right up here that look like trees, and then you'll see those as trees. So because your eye tracks through the color and then identifies it that way. You don't see all the individual branches and everything on a tree that's sitting on a mountain out in the distance. You don't see that. You just see an area of color. And because that's a color and your eye is blending that atmosphere with it, you identify it as a tree because you see a tree somewhere else about that color. Now, I'm going to go up to one of my favorites, two of my favorite painting brushes. You can tell that in landscapes because they got color all over them. Okay, this is my 1/2 inch and my 10. I love them both for doing this kind of work. I'm going to, let's do my 1/2 inch here. And I'm going to start adding some extender over here into some of my colors and also some of my open medium here, okay? And I'm going to start working some light. I want to work into the 7/8 and 9s here. Okay, and I want some grays, just some lighter grays, a little bit lighter here. And I'm going to start to set up the movement of some snow coming down here onto the hill. Now, that's a little opaque, which means just a touch too much paint. And so I'll push it out just a bit. And I'm going to be looking for movement into the hill here. And I'll change the color up a bit. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of blue. We'll definitely do that more in just a minute. And I'm just going to pull down here. See, the angle at which you pull creates the slope of the hill. And we want to do, I want you to get to start doing this. And this is the way in which I want you to paint. And I'll show you this here with a bigger movement. I'm going to take a little color, and I'm just going to pull that across like that. Okay? So you pull a movement, wipe your brush, and then just touch, take it off. Take that movement off just a bit, but leave some of that movement that you see there, because that creates the slope of the hill. Does that make sense? Okay. And I'll take some of this sky blue. I do like a little violet in it, tiny bit, some phthalo blue and violet. Put in some of my, and I'll put this in over here to kind of keep it nice. I like the gray in it, so the violet is not very bright. You got to think you got to go to your sky, and you want your gray. We can have a brighter violet later on. Now, violet is the cool color here of the sky, of the snow. So it is what we create the movement down this way into the shadows. Violet is your shadows, your snow shadows, okay? And I changed that up, and you can see that in some of my other colors and stuff in through here. I'll change that up all around in through here. So I like to really put in the movement, and then I kind of tap it around a little bit so it's not always the same, but you definitely see the movement. Does that make sense? So you want to see that movement. So I'll come right into here and maybe give just a little bit more of that nice blue, which is going to be our shadow color to the snow, and I'll push some of that in. And I start creating the look. Now, up here, you can see I created just a little roundness to it. And, I try to remember to do that every once in a while. And we're not going to use pure white, so you can see I'm taking it off to gray here. And, a little bit of roundness to something just kind of creates that nice little snow bank there. And you can push off one side or so of it right there to create that nice movement. And, of course, I may come back and add more. I'll revisit this a couple times to add more color. What I think I can get away with, detail and stuff like that back there, how much I can get away with back there. But it's gray, sometimes a little bit of blues. Sometimes you pull that right across, create that movement, soften that, blur out that movement just a bit. Sometimes your finger, sometimes a brush. You use whatever you want. It's your painting. Use little corners back here, touch little bits of the color here. So, and you know me with a lot of things that what I do and teach you in florals and everything, as I paint too much, then I go back and reach some of my other colors and paint it back down into position. That's what I like to do. How I like to paint. And so I may not make perfect rocks back here. I just may take some burnt sienna, some blues here, make a darker, you just use some ultramarine blue, nice cool violety blue here. Make some ideas of some rocks and here, let different colors come off your brush here. Let's grab our darkest phthalo and a little bit of the violet in here as we come right down here. That'll help pull it forward. That's my thinking, but I don't want to get that color up here because that'll bring it too far forward. Okay, so now I look at that, and as this starts to dry down, you go, oh yeah, that's drying down a little bit too much. I'm just going to take some of that violet out of my brush. I'm going to come build my blue, and I just let this dirty brush, sometimes I'll let that violet get in that brush, and I'll let this dirty brush, and I'll take that stroke again. Sometimes you may have to take that stroke 2-3 times to build it to the amount that you want. Now there's a lot there, so this is where I push right into that wet paint that's there to incorporate that. I'll take that, blur it into the trees here, but I'll push or pull a movement here into that and pull down slightly here, maybe just round that little hill. Sometimes I'll leave that texture in there. I'll build it, and at some point we've got to go ahead and build more into the front of the scene. But in my mind, I'm always considering, as I'm going back to that, towards that more of that vanishing point back there, getting it like the sky. That's the biggest mistake. And if I was going to tell you to do anything, that's where I tell you right in that area, keep it like the sky, okay? Because it's got to recede, and that's what causes it to recede. Now you can do a little bit of movement lines, like if I put a little bit more of a line here, I'll flatten out that hill a little bit. I'm going to get rid of the texture because I don't want texture back there. But I'll put that extra like little hill line right back in there. That just gives you a little bit more distance, or it pushes it back a little bit more. You'll see other things. I'll take some of these little bits of gray, other color that's out here, and you'll see me work through some of these areas. Sometimes little bits of violet here, colors, different colors, and I just add smaller little bits of movement. What is it? I don't know. It just breaks it up. See, it just breaks up, and you can see me just working and adding all different kinds of stuff here to the painting to get a little bit more interest. Sometimes it's just little marks. Sometimes it's just little drags like that. I use the brush, the different corners, and I don't switch a whole bunch of brushes. I really like to paint. My 10's my favorite. If I'm way in the back like this, I like the 1/2 inch. But my 10 overall, I painted probably 80% of this painting with my 10. And it's big enough to do what I want it to do, and small enough to use the corners to do other things that I kind of like to do. So there's other kinds of little marks. There's other kinds of little touches. Let's get over here, some yellows into that green so they change up a bit. So I might come in here and tap around a little bit and build those, put in a few extra little marks, and it just starts adding a little bit more. Now, right up in through here, and you see the ultimate contrast. That's just a little bit darker than what I have on the when I'm painting there. So I could take the edge of the brush here and increase the darkness here just a bit more here, just into tap in, pull a line, tap in some little verticals and horizontals here to create some interest right in there like that. Let them kind of soften and fade out till they get back up over here into that one. See, and so what I'm looking at is the color from here to here. The tree's getting smaller, that's good linear perspective. The tree is getting lighter like the sky back here, so that's good atmospheric perspective. So I've met the things. Now it's just how much snow, how many other little bits do I want to put another little mark of snow right in here, coming down off of that little hill right there. Maybe leave a mark or two, a little slope there, a bit different than what I did there before. I love the violets. Don't forget your violets. And I love that sapphire and this violet is the red violet is so pretty together. So many nice variations. And on this other one, I just kind of drag that through. Look at that violet color. See, it's a pretty color in there. It makes a beautiful color for the snow, the cool parts of the snow here. And so you can drag some of that down as you get in. And if you put the violet, let me just say this, okay, because this is important. If I put the violet, like I did in this painting, right up against here, like that, okay? So now what the viewer sees, what you see is you see the lightness of snow, and then you see the shadow of the snow coming in this way here, and it is the violet. And so your eye starts to see violet as snow, and the white, of course, the lightness of the snow. So it works. It really does. And sometimes I like it to skip like that so I can create highs and lows. But I don't want to go too more on here until I start to get up to the, put some other stuff on. But see, I just hold my brush flat like this, and you can pull and you can skip. You lift the pressure, change the angle slightly, and you'll skip. You'll start to break it off and skip. That's what that fusion brush does. Okay? One of the things we designed it to, so it starts to skip, and it gives you this broken edge of this light. So I control how my paint's going on by the angle at which I'm holding this and dragging this. So I hold it more flat to get that skip going there. like that. And that's good. I mean, you can build up, you can work on that more, but that gives you a good idea here where we're going with that, okay? All right, let's go back up to, let's go and use a little bit larger brush here first. We're going to stay wet into wet now, so I'm going to start adding my open medium, and I like the open medium and the extender and stuff together here. And I'm going to be looking for here some different colors that I can work this hill back up here a bit more. And I'm going to work the edge of that sky into it a bit more as well. Here, I'm going to put this on, but I'm really kind of putting it on with some of the open medium and some of the extender, so it's going to stay wet here for just a bit here, okay? And so everything I do from now on, you're going to be adding this stuff. Let's get into some grays. We'll build some areas of the rocks here first. Some nice grays. So any of your blues, but I really like the to stay more blue violet, which is the ultramarine blue and sapphire blue, to start some of these these gray colors and stuff like that. So you can see some of this. We'll put on too much, and I kind of shape them with a shadow first of where I want these rocks to kind of come through, and I'll make a little bit of a triangle here. But I do some horizontals and stuff, a lot of verticals. I do different types of rocks and all different kinds of paintings. And, majority of these things here on this one, I wanted in the vertical because I wanted to pull your eye up and down with the canvas. So I'm using the flat and I'm using the corner and pushing it out, tapping sometimes with just the chisel of the brush, just putting up some rock shapes here. Just, with the shadow. So I like to draw them with the shadow. Let's go a little darker, which means a little more blue. And I hit some of that light, so I'm going to go even a little darker yet here. More burnt sienna. And a little more blue, a little phthalo blue and stuff. Let's drop some of these shadows into this one here. So you can see it's a little darker. We'll drop that line in, and see, I'm already starting to get into this little copy mode that I don't like because the painting isn't quite as fun for me. I like to just dabble around like this and imagine the shadow side of the rock. You pull down to give it a nice vertical face, and you tap off to break that face up a bit. You can draw an angle to put some here. Here I'll just dribble a little along the edge of the river here that will put some more rocks in there. Take some of that color back up into there. That'll be fine. A few other little rocks and stuff that you can put along here. My problem is, I'm a solid, what I call a solid left brain painter, which means I'll paint every rock the same size, and I'll line them up like little soldiers if I don't consciously go in there trying to make different shapes. Rocks for me, they used to be a real bear for me. I didn't like them because I'd always make them all the same. And so I had to come up with making sure I changed my brush and used different things in my brush and stuff. Now let's get back here to some of our yellows. We'll gray this up. We're going to get this, what is this, right into a 5 and a 6 right here, right now. Okay, and let's pull across here. And we'll using the big brush. We'll go to a smaller one in just a minute. But we're just looking for some planes. So this right here will be like the light struck plane. This is the shadow plane. Anything at a slight angle like that will be the receding plane. You need to paint your rocks with at least 3 planes. Remember that. That's what's going to keep them. That's what's going to allow you to paint them quick, and what's going to allow them to look a little bit more natural, even though we're painting impressionistic. But you're going to need 3 planes to your rocks. And so I visualized 3 planes: the light struck plane, the shadow plane I already put on, and then an angle right there will be the receding plane. Okay, so here I'll put in a light struck plane right up onto those rocks, because the light's coming from top here, so it's going to hit that light, it hits that area there. And Then we'll put on a receding plane. Let's just put a little bit of light. Now, you know, big brush, because we'll break some of this down a little later, but we'll put some of that in here. And let's put in a nice side plane here. That'll give us a nice bit here. Sometimes I'll break these up with other little sides and planes and other little things here. Okay. Now, when you start to paint these rocks and you start to paint for more interest, we're going to, I'm going to put that brush away for just a minute. And we start to paint for more interest and stuff here, we'll work more colors. So I have this nice dark here, and so we're going to work more colors. This is a technique, and it's one that, and you've seen me use it in a lot in roses and everything like this. It's a wonderful painting technique, and it's probably the basis of a lot of beautiful paintings. It's called broken color. And broken color, those of you who study color theory, you know what it means. We do lessons on just broken color. But what it means is that you basically are going to keep the same value. This is a shadow, but now, and my shadow sitting up in here, but I may break that shadow up, and I may change the, not the value, I try not to change the value, I try to change the hue. So I will push in here, or the color. So here it's gone from more brown. I'll put in some violet that is right about that same value. It can be a little off, but right about that same value as this shadow. So it's still perceived as a shadow, but it has a slightly different color. And this is what gives the interest to your painting. And this is what takes, you know, some of you really great, you know, landscape painters will spend, like on a painting like this, we'll spend a day on the size of a painting like this doing nothing but broken color. And that's, and layer upon layer upon layer of broken color. And that's where they get a lot of their interest and stuff. So we might, you know, if it's a shadow, you want to keep it kind of cool, but maybe a little burnt sienna and the violet and a little bit of that, of the blue there, but change that up just a bit. Now I used a lot of green as well on the sides of mine, and I liked a bit of that. Smaller, sometimes go horizontal, and break that up. We can tap. And I'm gone down to my number 10. This is my favorite painting brush for this. And see, I'll start to work some of those colors just around here like this, just to tap it around. You know, I try to remember, like what I tell you in the roses and everything else like that that we're painting, guys. I try to tell you to try to remember, at least I try to remember, let's put it that way, that, you know, not to work too long in one color. Well, a bigger painting like this, you know, you'll see me just kind of tapping that tone around a bit, and I do like to do that. Excuse me. I do like to do that. And so I'll work that around here like that. So you can see the rocks starting to take some shape there, okay? And you work several colors. Now, I'm not going to, you know, I have my painting done. I'm doing this to show you guys this, okay? But I would work it again. I would change it up maybe a bit more yellow, break up some of those strokes of violet, sometimes pulling and dragging like this to create a side plane or a side rock plane here, which creates a little bit more difference into it. The more you put into, of course I don't put anything back here, you know, I could touch up a bit of these softer ones, especially right back up in here, but you know, little bits, you can just tap little bits of that up in there just to give the impression of rocks. We don't need to do a whole bunch up there. Now let's come over here, slightly warmer. Let's put a little bit of yellow into this. Let's go lighter, up around a value 8 or so, light. And let's look for the light expression a bit more onto some of these. So I have my light struck plane. I'm not in the receding plane. I'm in the light struck plane. I'm going to restate it a little lighter because I feel it could come a little lighter. So this is where you can get multiple tones on some of those rocks and stuff like that. And you can pull some of these around, but this is what'll give you a lot of this work, is adding some of these others. Now, I like to, like you just saw me there, I'll set the brush down and pull a little different, and I'll get a different movement, different type of movement. And I'm always looking with my brush at movement. Even when I'm painting roses, when I'm painting portraits, when I'm painting everything, I'm looking at the plane and the movement and how I want to capture that movement. And try not to be, the hardest thing is, and the hardest thing for me as a left brain painter, is that repetitive, getting it too much the same, getting it too repetitive, So now, before I go on here too much, let's just go back up here to our beautiful pine green, burnt sienna, maybe a touch of yellow into this. And let's just use this brush right here. Now we'll go a little bit taller than with the trees we have here because we're a little bit further forward, right? Maybe a few smaller ones like they bend out over the hill. We'll use some of the flat and the angle of our brush here just to create that nice movement of the tree there. So there's the basic shape of these little trees. They're going to push right there. And then we'll add a bit of blue, a little bit darker. We add a little bit of blue. And we'll get this up here like this. Okay, maybe a bit more of a point right there. Something like that. Impressionism of it. Sometimes I'll take even some of that sky and stuff and just touch into there to loosen up some of the edges and tap a little more color right around in there. Sometimes sometimes I get just really brave because I'm an impressionist part of it. I just get really brave and just like, boom, yeah, burnt sienna, love it. Just put in a touch of that up there. It all depends, and every one of us is a little different, so we all like different things. Now I'll go back to some of this light, and let's paint that rock right up in front of that, so we'll get some depth here. Tap the edges. Don't make the edges always perfect, what we call found edges. We can leave a little bit of that stuff there. Just put a little rock there. Okay. Now right below that is an area that, and I was talking with my daughter, those of you who don't know, my daughter is a very beautiful painter. I can't get her to paint on YouTube yet. She's a beautiful teacher, a wonderful woman, and just a beautiful painter. And we paint together out in the galleries in Nebraska. Matter of fact, we're going out in 2 weeks. We're going to spend another 2 weeks together out there painting together. And she's one of the reasons why I get so much lighter and so much airier and so much impressionism. And she has her bachelor's of fine art, and when she was taking all of those classes and stuff, she was like, Dad, try this, and I used to poo-poo it, and now it's just like, wow, that's just she has amazing ideas and effects for that. Someday I'm going to get her to paint on YouTube for you guys so you can see her paint. She's just really, really beautiful with it. Right now she answers the phone and helps you all and stuff like that, runs the studio, manages the studio. But we were talking about this yesterday or last night when I painted this and stuff, and I said, I really want to create a focal area right in here. And we were saying, should we do that with the dark, which gets us into problem here, or should we concentrate between the white? So we have basically between white and this gray. And so if we make this one just a little grayer, and if I come in here, and if I identify this area here as a value 8, then I'm going to come in with like a value 9 right in between the two, and this will come forward. Boom. Right in through here. And that will give me visual depth between, and all of a sudden, see, by the time I put this on, see how much darker that starts to look? Let me hit it one more time. So I try to keep it very light, up around the 9, a little bit of blue in it, just a little bit. But paint also. A lot of paint into this. And I want to use that edge here to break that. See how I drag that? See how it gives that little bit of brokenness into that? So I create that little bit of visual breaking of it and stuff. Drag that down. And that creates that edge right there. Now, so the goal here is to have it a little bit more edgy and a little bit lighter. And if I put any kind of dark next to it, and here with this one I have one rock valley. Here I'm going to do two, just because I can see two there very clearly. So I'm going to come in with a violet and a dark. So this becomes a real close, a very dark area right into here. So if I push that shadow right up into here, see how much. And you know what? A good violet would be kind of pretty in there, almost like that's a snow shadow right up in there. That's a pretty good idea here. You change your mind and you have some fun. That's what it's all about, right? So we'll keep that violet maybe around a value 7 or so, that shadow. Oh, that's kind of pretty. So we'll use that as kind of like a snow shadow here, right in there on the edge, see? But when in this one I was thinking this dark coming up against that light there, it creates kind of like a little nice focus area right there. And it does a couple things in the painting. Is it pushes that back, because now that doesn't look quite so white. Pushes that back, but it just really drives your eye right into that area. And I don't want to get these rocks too light, but maybe just a touch of that little violet in there. Violet would be, on these rocks, would be a beautiful, like this color here. Maybe just a touch of the sienna and stuff here. This violety gray would be a beautiful color into the receding plane side, so the angled side. So light struck, and then the shadow plane, and then receding planes, just like what we did. Those of you, I did a lot of this into the Quick Landscape series. So the playlist of the Quick Landscape, I painted 12 quick landscapes for you, just kind of bang those all out. But that one, the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon that I painted, that one will do a lot for you. Also that waterfall one would do really well, but getting those planes. And then as I come down through here, we'll just create some rocks and maybe a little lighter. Keep this. And I want to start increasing, as I start to build more texture, I want to start increasing the use of open medium, decreasing the use of extender, because extender medium will keep it loose and wet, and open medium will make it a little bit, I'm going to say it makes it a little bit thicker. And I want this to stand proud of the surface a bit. So I start to get textures as I start to come forward. So here you can see, as you come up through here, into the valleys here, snow, I take my snow, I'm going to make different kinds of violets and blues and violets here. And I told Jessica last night when I was there, I said, I got more brave, I want to put in some blues here first. Grab a little bit more. But I told Jessica, I said, I got a lot more braver in this painting than what I normally do with my blues into the snow. I said, I really enjoyed that a lot more. And so the shadow into the snow. So if light's coming up right through here, this rock is going to cast this shadow down onto the snow, and that's what you see there. And one of the things that I did that helps this, I think this area right here looks just a little bit more realistic. Was that I left these little breaks like this. Sometimes I just take the rock color and just tap it back in. You can see where I tapped it back in there. But those little break colors really help to break that up a bit here. Let's just pull a few shadow. Sometimes I let it granulate like that. Sometimes I'll put it in a little heavier. Here, I like both looks. Try not to always paint exactly the same. Here, let's get a bit more blue, violet. Let the color change up just a bit. Here. And we'll touch a little bit, so it's not always the same color. Sometimes it's a little different, but think shadow snow with that violet, right? Think that nice shadow snow here. We'll come up and put a few little marks of it around, and you can see that warmth of the yellow breaking up with that blue and stuff. That works really well. Let's just grab some of that, push that in, and now I'm going to thin this out, gray this and thin this as I come back over here, because I don't want any texture too much over here. I'm just going to streak some back and forth back up over here. Just push that back. Maybe a bit of our greens. And so if I want an area to recede, I start to use the extender medium. If I want it to stand proud, building stuff up, I start to use that open medium, or I'll thin out the open medium. The open medium is a little bit thicker. Just remember that, so you can get some nice proud areas for your painting that stand above the canvas surface here. Okay, so, and this is a little canvas board. Matter of fact, this one's from Dick Blick, 16 by 20 canvas board. Nice little practice one for you to learn that. But see, I'll keep those strokes kind of soft and just kind of wispy there. And those kind of things set the angle for the mountain, and then then your strokes, the smaller stuff that we use with snow and all that kind of stuff, can sit up, and you don't have to worry too much about the angles. So let's put in some lighter green. I put in this lighter yellow green right up to here. I want this to stand a little bit, so a little bit of this nice. So this is springtime coming, so we're going to have a bit of the green showing up here, somewhere up here. We want some here, and I'll build these colors sometimes just a bit, just whispered over. Lets that color kind of fade away in there a bit. Okay, you can see that here. We put a little bit up here, but as you move through, one of the things, and keep this in mind, guys, this is an important part. As you move through, I just don't want to repeat the colors that I do here. That kind of flattens it out. So when you look at this one right here, see this real light green I ended up here. You don't see it up here. Does that make sense? So you don't see it up there. So you got to think about, colors or part of your mountain heading into shadow or a little bit different here. So I'll be, painting this just a little different. And so that gives more interest to your mountain. If you paint everything the same, moving those same colors through, it's just all going to get flat, okay? So we want to be aware of some of that stuff, okay? All right, so let's go back and put some of this nice bluey violet right down into there. And we'll just kind of pull that stroke. This is what I like. It gives a movement, and I'll work that wet into wet edge there just a bit. So I'll get a nice, it's a nice area to really kind of work that wet into wet. But notice I'll pull some different angles and stuff here too to give a different slope. So it's not always that way. Give a different slope, a different feel to it here. Here, back like that. Okay. And around. And let's get up here a little bit closer, maybe towards our blues. Sapphire. Boy, I still got some of that violet right in there. Get this lighter right up there. Some of those nice blues. And kick some of that around. So this is all wet, so you can touch it a few times to incorporate the color to soften it out here. But don't do it too much. You'll lose the, it'll all become one color. So, touch around. Now what I'm going to do here is just slowly go up here towards my whites and add some of these nice grays up here as well. Right up here like this. We're going to slowly build. I'm going to come right back out into here. That's a powerful stroke. Isn't that great? Just put that on there and go, no, you don't do that. We just take our brush, I'll wipe my brush slightly like this, and then I'm going to look at incorporating it, moving the edges through, put on some paint. So there's a couple ways in which I paint, and I've explained to you guys, and is that many times I'll just, and this is what I use my scraper on. And especially like doing a beach scene. There's some seascapes that I painted on the channel, and I pull across this whole big thing here and put all this color up in the front of the beach, and I say, oh God, you guys just all had a heart attack. And see, that just puts on a lot of paint. And then what I do is I manipulate the paint and push it into where I want it to go. I can just kind of drag it down the edge of the little valley here, and as it's coming down towards this little valley, I can push it around and shape it, because I have paint there. Does that make sense? So I can push it around and shape it to whatever I want it to do. So sometimes you'll see me come in really brave and, come right up in an area like this and just go boom like that with the color and drag that through. Then I'll wipe my brush. Sometimes I'll control it by putting another gray into the brush and just work back into it here to take some of it out, okay, to build that area that I want to build. And so some of those areas up there I built 3-4 times. Model my brush here with some of these grays, a little bit of greens and stuff like that, and sometimes I'll pull across to give a different little feel of the snow there. Wipe my brush. Like right up there would be a great place to tap in a little bit of violet into my brush, slightly different than I used before. Don't paint too much with the same colors, and just take some of that out, drag some of that through, incorporate those two color marks together here. See a little bit of violet right there? Just kind of tap on that. Looks like a little hill of color there. Build up a little bit more. Not the same as my other one, and that's okay. Let's get just a bit more there. That's kind of nice. That might be a nice area right up there for a tree. Sometimes I'll push it with my fingers here. And but all of those little kind of ripply things, if you can leave those add a lot. Add a lot to your painting. They really do. And so, boom. See, I like that granulated edge. Wipe your brush. And let's just manipulate that edge a bit. Here. Pull that down through there. Get that nice working of that snow. And pull over a little bit more here. There we go, up like that. And push that in there like that, okay? And then I, look at my blues. Do I want to make a few lighter transitional blues to the violets and push them around? I love it, of course it's not quite there yet, but I do love it if I wait like 30 minutes to an hour so some of this open medium to start to get a little bit sticky, which depends on how much paint you put on. If you don't want it sticky, you use a lot of paint. But I let it get a little bit sticky, and then that gives me a different effect, a different look to it, which I do like. So let's grab some of this lighter color and just kind of pull down through there, right up into that edge. Pull some of this, maybe that's a little ground. We can put trees, more rocks up in there. That's our call. We can do whatever we want. Okay, let's take a bit of our pine and our burnt sienna, of our open medium here. We'll just put up the idea of a little tree there. And again, you could always use the atmospherics of the blues and stuff like that to set something back. Let's put up like an edge here. Maybe that's Mighty Tree up here. Always liked how Bill Alexander always said that. The Mighty Tree right up there. And see on this other one, let's go back to maybe put on a little roundness right up there with some snow, some grays. Kind of looks like snow. You don't paint snow with white, you paint it with grays and violets. Warm it with yellows and cool it with violets and stuff. All kinds of nice stuff going on there. And now, you know, when you go to paint these rocks here, here's my gray for my rocks. Slightly different color than the snow. But when you go to paint these rocks, you can leave them very angled or round them up. And I'll speak more of that in as we come forward in the painting here. So I'll just tap a few of those around here. But you start those little half tones, putting those in, tapping those around. Do you want more rocks? And remember, I want you to remember this, rocks show up basically on their shadow. So if I want to take some of this, a little ultramarine blue, if I want to make more of a rocky little face here, I can just quickly, if I put in any kinds of slight verticals, slightly angled, just kind of tap around that dark, I can push in any kind of expression of some rocks, see? So if I feel like my slope is a little bit too much and I want to get a little bit more going on with rocks and stuff like that, then I just tap those around like that. So you come in there and you get that, okay? Here. We can use some of those right up in here. Nice broken color. Slightly different color. See, that's good broken color right in there. And the more you add, of course, the prettier your painting is going to become. That's what happens. A little bit of that blue and that gray here. Start restating a few of those verticals here. Maybe those verticals can go just right up a little higher still yet right there. Get different, see, I like that. Just, here we go. And you can use slightly lighter grays. Draw in a little angled edge of a rock. Push up, grab some nice little textures to put on the top light struck plane of the rock. Sometimes pull down, sometimes pull at an angle. Here, sometimes I'll round them. And we can, up near the light of where that that sun hits, that real light snow, we can actually add a bit of yellow into those right up there so that that feels like the sun is hitting right up there. You can do that. All kinds of ways that you can do it, but it's a working of your verticals and horizontals. Take your two colors, you create a mid-tone, which is your receding tone here. It could go a little darker, which is your receding tone, which helps your rocks round over. So you don't just go from light to dark. You can start rounding them over just a bit with some of those other colors and stuff like that, and we can set some other pretty little rock faces. Sometimes take your rocks right out into the snow here. Dabble them around, tap around a bit there. So I get different looks, but the most important color on the rocks, I find, is the dark. And so I usually will tap all around and then come back through with some dark to shape them, to add other little breaks or other little things going on with the rocks. I like to, at least I do, I like to paint the rocks with the dark colors more than anything else. So I can come back here, use just a corner of my brush, add any kind of little details or something like that if I wanted to detail up and add something. Works really nice. Create another little break for the rock here. tap some down through there. And yeah, and add a bit of lighter gray right up against the edge there. Build that. That's all up to you. So I'll go back and forth several times building them. We'll drag this edge out. Lots of different ways to see them and build them. And we don't need to spend a tremendous amount of time. You guys get the idea. But, you know, use different angles on your brush. You know, like one of the things over here, I grabbed some of the blues, violets into these grays. Made this nice thing here. And I started to push-pull. Remember we did this on the pears and stuff. The push-pull into a larger plane like that just gives you a nice variation and a nice modeling. So as I start to come forward, I want the rocks to have more details, more colors, more you know, more broken color, and I'll start changing my techniques over to a push-pull and a few other little things, which I'll show you here as we go on with this painting. But we'll have a little bit of this stuff tapped around. When I feel that I'm getting pretty close here, let's get a little bit more blue-gray right in through here and kind of drag this over. I like that little snow. Let that come over here, just breaking up a bit. Maybe just a touch more power to that snow. So we'll go a bit lighter right up through here. Sometimes just let it sit up a bit and then just come back, tap through. Use your brush, put it on, and then manipulate it through. That's what I like to do here and create that snow. But I don't always like the vertical, so sometimes I come in here and I'll make a horizontal pull across or an angled pull across and just tap it along like that snow's just hanging right there on the edge of a rock or something like that, you know, so that it's not always the same. It's not always the same. And then we'll come in here and we'll grab this little bit of blue there. So you can go back with your broken color and tap some more. And of course you would probably want to revisit all of this area again and step back and take a look. But you'll want to revisit all this area again after you do the front part of your painting. Okay, so you know, there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do with that. Okay. Anyway, so that gives you kind of a nice view of setting up the background and the midground. And I think because we're at an hour and 32 minutes. Yeah. So last night when I was painting this I was getting close to done. So I am talking a bit much, but I think that, you know, this helps you to hear some of this stuff. I do like a little bit more of the movement I got there into that one after I have this movement. So that's something that I look back and it's just like, oh, you know, maybe I can, if I take some open medium so it's a little bit thicker here and I just come down like this and create that movement. Now I'll let that be a little bit light for right now because it's going to dry down, and if it doesn't dry down I can always glaze that down, but you can always grab a little water and pull through just to make it a little bit transparent and stuff. But I can give a little bit of the movement there on that side, and that's kind of a nice little movement there. It's not taken away from right up here. If it does too much, I start to just tap it a bit and take some of that out. Now that's going to dry about a value down, so it's probably going to dry out okay. I'll probably just maybe I'll change the angle of my brush so my stroke is more powerful, so it's not quite as broken. So I'll put that color on just a bit more right there, and I like that. And I had a bit more color working through. So you can, you know, as you finish one hill, you can go back and tap through. But just don't, this got to remember atmospheric. This one's got to be less than what's going on in here, you know. And of course, this one here, you can build up pretty good. You can get quite a bit of stuff going into this one here. And You know, that's some of that. And you can create like snow ridges here, you know. You don't always have to have a stroke like that. If you feel like you're really, really vertical, take a couple of blue horizontal strokes like this and break the snow up with the little shadow edges there as well. You know, you don't want to do it so much that it's just, I mean, the whole thing just looks so, you know, it's like the Teton, so dangerous, just boom. But yeah, you can have a bit of fun with it. Okay, so we'll go over to, I'm going to go have a cup of coffee and then take a look at this for a second. Well, then we'll continue on. We'll create another video for this. We'll continue on part 2. We'll paint the water and the front rocks and stuff like that. Okay, I think that'll be a good breaking point for it. But that's a good idea for some of your perspective. And you know, just one last little thing here. Let me show you this again. Here towards the end, you can always take any of these kind of grays, extender, because you want this thin, not open medium, extender this time, thin in your brush. And hit those edges right back through there like that and push those trees back to whatever kind of depth that you want to have right there. And any kind of edge, so if I pick up a little more blue-white right up through here, any kind of edge you have right up here is what's going to really separate and push that mountain back, pull this particular triangle forward, okay? Then we'll come up and we'll paint the water on the next one, all right? Okay, see you guys on that one. Okay, guys, welcome back. Had myself a nice drink of coffee, took a look at it. You know what I forgot? I forgot to put the trees in right in through here into the back, so I'll do that real quick here. Just a few more little trees, pine green, burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow here. Vary the colors. We'll add some blues in just a minute here. But just some, just to break up a bit, add another little bit of area of movement, some idea of something like that. You know, I like the pine trees. They're just a different shape, and they're a nice, strong vertical to have in your painting, you know, to give that extra interest and stuff. Here, we'll grab a little rock color, a little blue, some green, just tap in. Start making the colors just a bit more vibrant as you're going to come forward too here as well. So you can add a few there. You can add as many as you want there. I could use just you know, this is the kind of thing you look at. Could use just a touch more of an edge right up into there. And I start to look at that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, you know, step back and take your brush and just start adding little edges and see, you know, if you can get away with some interest back there without affecting the depth. But you can see how that's drying down. See, it's not quite as nearly as light and stuff. And so when you're working with acrylics, you got to realize acrylics dry a value different. And so sometimes, you know, if you're working at a tone and you're a tone painter like me, you're going to make that value a value lighter than what it's going to be. Otherwise, it's going to dry down and disappear on you too much. So when you put it on, it may look different. Okay, let's get moving. So I'm going to take some extender here and some open medium here, right down in here. And I'm just going to do it right into my rock colors that I have here already, because I want some of these rock colors to appear into the water. And I'm going to start to place in the water. And I'm going to be using my blues, basically some green. And I love that, you know, going up into the mountains and you see a lot of green, especially, you know, glacial water and melting snow water and stuff like that. You'll pick up lots of green. We're going to work, I'm going to put on a lot of paint up in here. A lot of strong horizontals and verticals and tapping around. And I want to constantly keep working these colors, maybe a little violet into them. Putting on some nice thick paint that I'm going to be working on or working into here into the painting for a while. Here, this will stay wet for quite a while, and so I want to, and you know, as I work in my stuff, so extender and open medium both, some of my greens, and I'll work some light colors in this in just a minute. Greens, a little bit of burnt sienna showing up in there because we're going to have impressions of rocks and stuff. So I put the, you know, right in here, I put the impression of a rock. that is a submerged rock right there as well. So I put that in there as well, and that works pretty good. Anyway, so I'll put that in. Then we'll get a bit of light here. A bit of sapphire comes into this as well, right up in through here, which is a nice kind of a grayed color. I'll use that aqua kind of color and to create the kind of swirling water from here. But I want to get all these darks in here, and then we'll push in some other colors here. But a bit of that sapphire up here, which you're going to see is a more grayed color, which it is. It has black and white in it, and so it is a more grayed color. So we'll push some of that in, and then we'll flip over to our ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, and white as we get back. Now see how much brighter that makes that. See how much brighter that color becomes, and we can work some of that into this water here and set this on. This is just all going to stay wet here for a while as we work our colors. We want that to come in back through here, back around like that. That's good. And let's add a bit more light to this. So I'm still working with my big brush, my 3/4 inch brush. Now see, that's the light that I want to get in there, but I just want to push some movement in. We're going to push a lot of movement into this water, and it's going to be churning. So, you know, I'm going to just tap this around and just let it in. That light color is going to mix up and make some lighter greens and some darker, and sometimes a little grays as it hits that burnt sienna and stuff like that. But it's going to start to make this these colors here that are a little bit lighter, but just moving. I'm just painting it for getting in this churning movement into it. Let's go a little more phthalo and some green here. This lighter, some of this greenish kind of color here, and I'll paint back the darks again. I do this, you know, when I paint, you know, like a commission painting, or I'll put a lot of work into it. I'll do water like this big brush, and then slowly step the brush down, working the water, but I'll repeat the water many times as I'm looking for some of this movement and stuff, you know. So we do. So I'm just going to grab some of this and get some of this and get paint into here. That's the big thing. You know, interest comes to your painting through paint. And so I don't want any of this area in through here to be thin. I want it to be thick paint, just lots of really great paint. And that's what's going to bring it forward. Now I'm going to set that 3/4 inch down for a bit. And I'm going to come in, before I get too far into this, I'm going to set that rock in. So it's an idea of where that rock is going to go right in there. And just make that nice gray, ultramarine blue. It's not, I'm using sapphire blue and burnt sienna, a little bit of white. We'll make it stand proud here a bit for a second. But you see it works right into that blue real quick. And so it's a nice thing to really kind of draw it in right now. And it'll start to soften out here, or tack up, let me put it that way. It'll start to tack up here in a few minutes, maybe 20 or so. We'll go work on some other stuff while it tacks up. And I like to put it on, work the edges in, and then start letting it tack up, and then I'll come in and make a whole new set of colors and techniques on it. So, you know, right now it goes in very soft. And, you know, when I used to paint in oils and stuff, I'd have to work this and, you know, back it out. And it sometimes became difficult because every time you touched it, it just kind of blended out. And so with the acrylics, I just let it dry a bit and tack up, and then it stops that. let's take a little bit of our shadow right in through here. We're going to create that rock and rapids right in there. And see how I tap and move my brush a lot, guys? This is what gives you your visualization, your movement that you want. And we want some of this up into the shoreline here. Move your brush around. Model your brush with some of these colors. Move it around. Here, underneath that rock, we'll put some shadow right up underneath there. Okay. Right up along the shoreline. Sometimes I pull down. You know, in water painting, pulling down, calms the water, creates the reflections. And pulling across is going to give it some of the movement and stuff that you want. So we want some movement and stuff in here. And I'll take some of this nice thick color. See, this is where I come back. So I paint the light, and then I'll come back and add some of the ripply movement here. Like this, pulling through to create this way. And I try to work that, and if you notice that I've sped up on the water here just a bit, okay? And I do that because water, I'll make it all the same. If I take too long with it, I have to speed up a little bit with it because I'll make it all the same. Now I'm gonna take some of my burnt siennas and greens and I'm gonna cast that down into the water. Some horizontals and some verticals here, and cast that right down into the water here. Push that out. Vary that around, and that's going to give you, not only does it carry the rock colors down into the water, but it also can make the water look like it's a little bit transparent. Well, it is transparent, Dave. Make it look like it's you can see the bottom here. So I put like a sunken rock right in here, and you do that with the color, and basically the river color goes over it a bit. We'll do that in a minute, but carry some of that in. But I like to carry the tree colors, the rock colors out into the water where you're going to get some reflections. That makes it really pretty. And the thing is about painting really beautiful water, and I do it all different kinds of ways, from all the way from the Dutch technique to Louis Ashton Knight, who I just love his work from the, he was a wonderful landscape painter at the turn of the century, 19th century, and did a lot of stuff over in France, and went over in the Normandy area and stuff. And so I went over, and one of my trips over when I was teaching in Paris, one of the trips, my friend and I, we rented a van, and a bunch of us and our students, and we all took a trip out, and we went to find all the little places that, Louis Ashton Knight had painted in the before the war, before World War II and stuff, and we found all the little homes and the little rivers and the little places, and trying to see what it was that he saw in his paintings. And I'm lucky to have one of his paintings in my collection and studying it and stuff. But I just love it. And he was he's a second generation painter. His father was a painter as well. Anyway, so now I'm going to take just a tiny bit of light into this, and I'm going to come right through here. And this is what I'm just going to lightly drag through. Don't paint too long with this. But I like to set the motion, then tap it a little bit. And that sets movement. So we want this water to kind of come around the corner here a bit. Pull down. We're going to set some rapids and stuff. And so, I'll set that in. So I just start some of the movement. I haven't started the white part of it there yet, but I just started that. And so you got to imagine where the water comes down. I've got to put another rock in there. But it's going to come down, hit this bank, and it's going to pull back down this way. So I'll set some of that. And sometimes I won't get it with the light, so then I'll come back and push in a little bit of dark till I start to get that movement there. So I'll go back and forth. Sometimes I'll use a nice violet in there to get a nice little bit of the dark violets You know, it's like I said, I really like, I do a lot of drawing with the light, but I do my best drawing when I paint with my dark. So I create, you can kind of see the water folding down like that, see? So you do it not only with light, but do it with dark. Let's grab some blues, some greens, some ultramarine blue, some green, some burnt sienna, and we'll put some of the shadows here and up onto the rock. Nice thick paint here. Have to really get it kind of thick. Dab a few more little points there. Okay. Let's and sometimes I just put the rocks in dark and I'll leave them there as the dark. I like that. And sometimes we're going to add another rock or two right out here. Let's put one right up here onto the shoreline that has got hit here. And you'd be surprised. I want to start using the thicker paint because we're coming forward, the thicker paint. Be surprised though, you know, here in putting these in, how just a little bit makes the impression. Now that you start to see some of that, it doesn't take that much to really make the impression of a rock. We're going to put we're going to put light and stuff on it, of course, but we'll help round that corner right there. And I got a bigger tree I got to still set in there, but you know, maybe I am talking a bit too much. I'm not getting it done. Here, let's put this bigger, let's go back up to this bigger, lighter one here. Get some of this, when I have some of this nice broken color in there, different colors. Concentrate on the verticals though, right in there. And we'll lighten this up to a nice gray here. Put up that edge there. How much you want to do, that's up to you. Here we'll put a bit more light right there. It hit here. But leave those edges. You can round the corners or you can leave more sharp edges. We'll talk a lot about that in just a minute. Here. A bit more of a rock right there if you want. And then let's go ahead and add that tree in there. And I'll do it with some of my blues and burnt siennas and greens here. And I want to come in, I want to break this plane just a little bit. I don't, just so it's a nice big tall tree here. So it breaks that plane here. And just whisper that in there, get those colors and stuff going in there. And how much detail you put in is up to you. Use your... We all have favorite tree techniques, you know, and mine actually comes from Lewis Knight, but that's tonight. But his look I really, really liked. And I did a lot of his paintings. I'd say I recreated probably about 20 of his paintings in the years I studied him. And how he did things. And and you can put, if you want, you know, a light source in there. You can say a little bit of light comes back down in on that side, hits on that side. That helps a bit. I don't want to get too carried away with all that kind of stuff, but you can say that happens in there. And you know, for like me, I like to put an edge of a little bit of snow or rock here. Like sometimes push it back, I'll push something right up in front of it there, and that sets it back. See how that little marks? This sets it back. And we'll take some of this nice, almost like tree color, and tap it in through some of these rocks. But burnt sienna, key off your burnt sienna and your blues, but you're going to add other things, yellows and violets and other little things to them. And as you start to come forward like this, I want you to, you know, get braver with your colors now. and you know, just put on some color spots, like, you know, boom, look at that burnt sienna. That's going to dry down beautiful, but maybe I'll hit a little blue right next to it, and that just creates a heck of a lot more fun and interest to it, to your painting. Let's grab some of that, more of that burnt sienna and stuff, and drop some of that right along the edges of the rocks and stuff there. That really is kind of a pretty color against that blue. I like that a little bit better than the original one. But so that puts that in, and we'll grab some of this and just kind of maybe tap in that other little rock. I'm going to put some of that burnt sienna into that rock. Kind of like that. Okay, maybe a bit of that down into this one. I like that. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's get back into the, just rinse that brush real quick. If you rinse it, since we're into the alla prima part of it, poke it back into extender. Remember what I said, that water is a fast drying thing. So if you rinse your brush, it's not illegal to rinse your brush, but if you do, you put water in it and put some extender back in it to get that back in. Now let's just take some light color. We'll just model it right in here. Grab some of our open medium. But I don't like to use the open medium like super thick, because, you know, we have a couple of mediums. One of the fun mediums to do this with is a medium we call faux medium. It does a really great job. The open medium is just a touch sticky, so I just add a little bit of extender to it to move it around. But we're just going to start pushing like this. None of that push-pull, that gives you so much interest. Now I got a lot more light on the other side of the brush here, so I'm going to deposit some of that. Sometimes I'll work it right into the see, it's a rough idea how I want this water to flow. Does that make sense? Here, pulling down how I want that water to flow, tapping in like this. We're going to want some of that to flow down this way here. And again, like I say with everything, I put on too much here. I'm going to put on too much, and then I'm going to paint it out. And I like to paint it out. And I'm just going to kind of push-pull here, coming down. This is going to create some of the movement. Sometimes you can swirl it a little bit to create some different, you know, looks and swirls around. You know, that's what a lot of artists paint water do. We can get some of the green and the phthalo in here. That makes beautiful swirly kind of colors into the waters here. So you can kind of swirl it just a bit here. But I like to touch into it, paint into it, pull it out here, tap a bit. Move your brush. It's swirling water. Move your brush. I use the corner of the brush here just to kind of tap through here. So I put on too much, and see, I start to paint it back, and then I'll put on some more, and I'll start to paint it back. Grab some burnt sienna with it, so the color isn't always just all the same. We'll take out a bit there. There. Sometimes I use my finger, and I'll pull down for like the edge of the rocks and incorporate those down like that. That gives you a nice look. All different kinds of looks. And then I'll pick up more onto the corner of the brush if I want, and tap through. Well, let's try to pick up some paint, Dave, and tap through here, and that'll start to give you the ideas of little rapids kind of movement through. Pick up a bit more white, whip it up into this area bits and model it up, and you can tap in some more lights. Sometimes I'll use my finger to push it around, but you can see it's really wet with color. And it's really, when you start to get a lot of paint on like that, it's hard to control. So I start to go to a smaller brush and push it around, which I'll show you in just a minute. I'm going to push in a bit more here. Okay. And a bit more here, right like that. There to create that. I'll get back into some like greens and other colors here and create some sideways movement here, up and down. round and through, push it around. You'll see all the other little quick landscape videos. Some of my water techniques are a little different. This is what I used on this one. And I can push that color around if I want to create more swirls and stuff like that. See? Thank goodness, non-toxic acrylics here. Push that around. Sometimes I use the brush, sometimes I just push it around like that to create those flows here. This is really thick in here, so it'll track with your finger a lot. And so as you're building that up there, and that'll stay wet till tomorrow too, by the way. I'm going to push in a little bit more, tap it around a bit here, and we'll push a bit of this right around this rock up here. And again, it's too much. I know it's too much. Here, I'll take it out in just a minute. I'll take just like the edge of this sometimes and create the little push-pull swirls here. Light swirls through. Different color, you know, sometimes take your, but get back up into those, you know, those nice burnt siennas and rock colors and pull down. Sometimes pull a vertical and then come in here and tap out and start to paint out some of it. And I'll go back and forth, maybe reset a light color in there and tap that around, and then, so you kind of like build the area there, okay? So you kind of like build that area there. And we'll come back, build just a bit more, and I'll start. Now I got enough paint on there. See, I can start tapping and pushing the colors together to create even more looks, different looks here. See, more looks to the water. See, and it's a fun way. This is a fun way, fun way to paint it. We'll pick up some green and yellow here, just kind of pull through a bit. It's very wet. It'll stay very wet for you to completely paint the water. And then you could flip back over to an acrylic technique and paint it again, you know, pull stuff through. And we'll put a little burnt sienna in it as I get close to the rock, because then you'll pick up like areas of the rock, see? Like maybe it's underwater or something like that. Just a little impressions of it here. So you get some of that going here. Tap that through, sometimes tap that through. And we'll put on just a bit more light here. Right through over that kind of sunken rock right there. That's kind of neat. And then what I did with mine is I went to a smaller brush, down to a 4 or a 6 here, and put some of this color in, and I start to just work smaller. See how I work and grab this and push this out. So I want to start creating not only the movement of the water, but some little ripple-like things through here. So I want a small brush and to kind of control the movement of the water as I come down through here. So I'm going to pick up some light, tap this in here, and I'll use this to create the lighter movement here. Small brush movements here. Let's take just a touch of that out. So I'll put it on, and then I pull through. Remember what I always say, the dark really does a great job of setting directions and stuff like that to your water. So the light, like, see, I can push the light in like this, here like that. And it does real good, but then I'll push this dark and I'll come more of the little bit of the burnt sienna into it here. And that just does a real good job of setting the direction, the flow of the water here, right down like that. Lots of different ways, and you'll all see the water flowing a little bit different But mine comes in, hits this rock, and comes back down this way, which means I need a little bit more light pushing down through. Some nice stuff happening right in here, swirling here. There you go. And I'm going to come over here, someplace where the paint's a little sticky. I like to push the lights in after it's a little sticky. We might wait just let this dry up a bit and go work on some rocks. But so I go back and forth. Let's push a little dark. So I create a little calm area here underneath the rock. Push that side to side there. I'm pushing the brush, lifting off a bit of the light, setting up the the movement that I have there. I'll put a bit of a downward movement here. That edge there. And so when you see this, see that it's almost like a little granulate. We granulate. That's after I let it dry. I just drug a little white like that creates that little granulation. It's hard to do that on the wet because everything wants to move. So I let it start to dry up, and that's when I get the final little lights to the water where I want the water to go. So you'll see some of that right into there. You got to let it dry up. That's why I like the acrylics. Is I can get a whole different look. It doesn't have to be a blended look. I can use the granulated look of the acrylic up on top here to start to create that. We'll just create a little side to side, a little up and down motion there. So you get the idea here. That's the big thing. We have to lighten that this rock coming out of the water. I put some yellows into it and stuff that I really liked. So I put some nice yellows. You can stay with your smaller brush if you want, but a nice warm color to help it really come forward off of there. I kind of drug that through bit into the water so it mixes with that blue. So, if you see the color up on top, you see the color up on the bottom, through the water, but it's going to mix with the water slightly. So you just see that color there. And then we'll come up here and put in a nice kind of gray here. We'll mix all this colors of this water and stuff in. And when I painted this rock up here, I painted it many different times, many different colors, so because I wanted it to really have a lot of interest up there. So I put a lot of colors into it. And so we'll get some blues into those yellowy kind of colors and set some of those in. So you get all kinds of colors and many touches. And what I generally start to do is I start to, as I touch, other areas of the painting, I take those colors over and I start to touch them into the rocks. That's what I really like to do. Carries the color, but it also just, creates a nice harmony. And it really gets a lot of interest to the rocks because they carry a lot of color to them and stuff. So all kinds of ways to paint rocks, but all kinds of ways to make grays in there and do that as well. But when they start to get really wet like that, a lot of stuff on it, that's where I like to take a bit of a break from them. Put a bit of burnt sienna into that water right there. You can, if you want the rock to stand out more, calm the water just a bit by it. Pull down, pull across, calm the water just a bit by it, and the rock stands out more. And it could be a touch lighter yet. Touch lighter. Right up there. There we go. Now, basically what we have to do here, I'll have to, put a little bit more into there, but I want it to tack up just a bit. Let's take our darker violets. Onto this side, these rocks sit mostly into the shadow. So what we want to do is keep our brown violet kind of colors here. Burnt sienna and violets coming off. We'll kind of keep an idea of some shadows. Remember, I kind of draw the shadows here, draw the rocks with the shadows, but I'm keeping this really cool. Here we'll drop these down into the water there. Like to make the shorelines undulate a bit here, because that creates more interest here. Maybe a bit of the greens into some of that violet, and we'll pull some of that down up here. You can make it stand a little proud of the edge there, like a little bush or something like that. Get some of those colors in, right? And then you can start lightening up. Value-wise, look at the values. Now, you don't want to, I want this to be one of the lightest, because I want the viewer's eye to pull in and go right up here. This is where I wanted the viewer to go, right up in here. So really, I kind of compressed the values here and pulled your eye back up there. And so I'm going to keep these darker. I'm just going to dirty this all up here and cool. Kicking off of the violets here, and start to kick in some colors here. I'll push this all in. I like these areas. I've really got to come forward, so they need a lot of paint. Does that make sense? So I'll be painting it quite a bit, actually. But the values are very close together. It's not as light as the other areas of the paintings, so we get the feeling that it's in shadow. Here, we'll draw this rock out a bit, okay? And it's just a slow refining process here that I'll use. Let's get a little more violet green, burnt sienna, some nice violets in here. Push these back just a bit. Get that little angle coming out. There. Cool that off. And grays, but keep the values softer. Put in lots of, you can have lots of, this is great areas for like broken color, movements, stuff like that, Imagine some yellows and greens and burnt siennas. Cool it with a bit of violet, maybe a touch of blue, and pull some of those colors right down through here, like this is grasses or ground, something like that, see? And just paint, what I started to do when I started to learn this, and I look at the masters and stuff, and it was just like, okay, paint it. You've got a lot going on here. You don't need that much going on over here. You just need to kind of create some shadows and some lights and some areas, and the viewers will kind of see this as rocks or ground or grasses, and and that's what an impressionist does. And in the other ones, this would be one that I would drag with my favorite scraper, just pull an area down, because the scraper creates a lot of interest, and you can pull like this and see all that beautiful creative color that works right into there. And then you just come through with some dark. It's really a lot of fun. You just come in through with some darks like this and create some shapes. You already have the color movement in there. You just create and draw some shapes in there, and it'll start looking like stuff. It's these a little darker here, and we got to create this better rock here though. We'll create the edge of this rock, pull that back, tap this down and through. But some of the great impressionists would just tap color around. And you when you're painting these, you're thinking of your light struck plane, your shadow plane, and you know, but mostly just start playing the rocks. Now, playing the grays and the colors. Now we can warm it. A little bit of yellow, a little bit of the color here. We can warm this just a bit and say, oh, maybe this rock comes out here, right up here towards the light. So this one comes up here towards the light. See? So we can put, and you can round it. Now, there's one thing I told you in the first video. You can round down just a little bit, change your values, and so your rocks don't have to be angular. I like a lot of angular rocks, but you know, most artists paint rocks not quite so angled as I like to make them, and so you can round some of your rocks, pull your color around, but I like to work in lines more than roundness or shapes and stuff. You can put some violet over there. Why not have like just a bit of the nice violet, a little cooler, the red violet, some of your sapphire, maybe a bit of the gray into that, and add just a bit of that here and there, as maybe you'd see the edge of the snow or something like that. See, it doesn't need to be a whole set of lot. Now, as you come forward right up into here, yeah, you can start building some more rock shapes, maybe a little bit lighter, you know, build in some rock shapes. Let's just tap off with a little bit darker, not quite the shadow, and set that receding plane in there. And in doing so, I kind of took out my shadow, so I'll push some shadow back in, right back in there. Kind of set that rock. See, the rock goes real quick. After we get all this color and stuff on, you can set in rock shapes, constantly change your tones, change your angle a bit here, and make some different rock shapes here. Let's make a... But I don't necessarily blend my, I don't necessarily blend the tones together. Sometimes I just leave a nice strike, a definite strike between my light and my dark. That makes the rocks look a little more harsh, not as round, but I do like that. So a little bit more in the planes, you know, you see more of the light struck plane and the shadow plane, and the receding plane stays very soft. That's kind of like I do a lot of them. Light to dark real quick, but you could round it a little bit if you want, just a touch, if you don't want your rocks quite so sharp. Here, push the edge a bit. These stay nice and soft over there. Let's just grab some nice colors, different colors. You can start shaping up more. See, I just like all this. See, I'll put that modeling in, get that nice angle. We'll take a little bit of shadow here and just break it up like there's other little faces of the rock. And then we'll pull some down, create that nice shadow there. And it could go a touch lighter maybe. So we'll just lighten up and just keep some of that. Whoa, that's a little bit too light there, Dave. Wanted to show you not so light. Yeah, that's will dry down, but boy, that's not that much. So we'll push that on. So you can kind of see you build that, and then you know how much more we can get a bit more, maybe just a bit warmer. So anytime you add your burnt sienna or your yellow, you're going to warm those up, right? You're going to warm those colors right on up there. So, and it's going to warm those grays. So be careful if you're on the shadow from adding too much of that in there. But yeah, you can get a little bit of that green, just a touch of violet to cool that. We can pull some of that down there, get some of those edges nice little gray rocks, ideas of them through there. Like that, so put some of that light on. And like I say, I'm going to make this just a little more rocky than the original right there. So I'll take a nice shadow, a lot of violet here, and just tap through there, create that. And that shadow is really important. Let's take some of that shadow blue violets here, maybe a bit of the burnt sienna into it. That's what creates the real beautiful colors in and around of what's going on, or creates like the shadow part of this rock here. So, you know, basically you paint it with like a receding tone and a shadow tone to keep it down there. Let's put a nice half receding tone here. Soften off this so we definitely see the light side. Then we get a shadow side here. Drag this up a bit. There. That's going good. So now I look and I start through here adding just a bit more. I'd probably add some more here, you know, after I started the rocks on the other side here. And but keep these darker. That's the big thing. Keep these darker, and because they're in shadow, they're sitting into the shadow. The light's coming in upper this way. It hits here. It's going to hit right around here. You could light this up and light some of the water up there even more, and say the water, you know, does get lighter over there. I'm going to rinse this out for a second and put it back into my extender. Get that water out of there so this stays wet. If you leave that water in there, it's going to dry on you. Your paint's going to dry. So I get that on. I'm going to go back to a lighter little blue here and just work some of that through here. Just swirling it down. Again, I put on too much there. And let's go a little bit lighter and just kind of pull and swirl some through. This is how I like to work it. I like to go work on the rocks a little bit, come back, hit the water again a few more times, and then when the water starts to really dry up, that's when I can get that granulated look to here, but it's still a little bit wet there. And let's take a little thin color of our green, violet kind of colors here. Work that through just a bit. That's what gives you the real prettiness to the water there. Get some of those colors in there. Water should carry the colors of your composition. Shouldn't just be blues and whites. Should carry all the colors of your composition. So some of these darker rock colors that I put in over here need to go into the water here, and we'll step this out a little further into some of that water, pull it across a bit, soften it, and create that nice coloring there. Let's color this back. And we can use the, you know, so as I go up here to do more, now you can use the small brush or follow Sargent and use the larger brush and, you know, use just the corners and push. I like that fusion because those hairs kind of split out a little bit. I like that as I'm kind of drawing around with them a bit. Here. There we go. Create some of that, more of that movement. And, you know, when you come back out here, let me grab some of this sienna, burnt sienna. You know, sometimes you can just get away with setting in a rock just with a shadow here. So let's set that in, and we'll pull just a, this last one, I kind of like that. I pulled just a little bit of water right through, right there. And we'll touch that bit of dark right there. Yeah, just a bit of water through there. It makes it kind of pretty. It gets you all different, you know, it's a little different, a little wider right over here and stuff, and that's all right. I'll put a little bit of light gray right there, break that rock off. Could have a bit of a receding plane, sits right between the two colors of your shadow colors and light colors. So, grab some of this. Little touches, little marks. Create, just mark it around like this. That'll create the shapes of your rocks, see? And then you can, you know, build some other darker colors for the shadows. Here. Just pull those down. Create some different shadows. Add some burnt sienna and blues. Here, touches. I like that little bit of burnt sienna in that on this one this time. Let's grab through some of this. Burnt siennas, yellows. I just started this. I wanted more colorful onto the side over here, so I started to just paint, you know. And this was a lot of fun. You just paint. Just start moving some of your colors and your paints through here. We want to get light, we want to get color and energy over here, and bring it forward. Get some of these green, these yellows, see, and it's got a nice warmth to it. And I think, honestly, in my original one that I did last night, I kind of got it a little too compressed. I'd like to have a little bit more life and energy over here, so a little bit more color. I think just get that in there. Just what I love this about the beautiful part about Impressionism. Just using your brush now, and just get in there and paint. And sometimes and this is what I'll do. I'll kind of clean up the area a little bit. This is what I do in a lot of. I'll read the color, and maybe mix this up. Not mix, but kind of pull this together and stuff. And kind of start tapping this around. See, it's a beautiful color to use and break up those tones. This is what I really like the knife for, because I can just grab these tones like this, and I'm not shaping the rocks. What I'm looking for more than anything else is the movement of tone, just color. And so I'll put that on. Let me grab just some extender, some open medium, some of this color, maybe dirty my brush all up, and just kind of model through these colors. See, it's got all these beautiful tones now in here. See all that nice movement that's in there with all those colors. Now, like I say, I'll come in, like I like to do, is I'll come in here with some darks and start sketching back where I want rocks here. And it works pretty well that way. It's kind of a nice way to, you know, really quickly, impressionistically grab some rocks. Put in some rocks. But remember, if you're like me, left brain, we have to, you know, break up and use our colors a little differently. And I'm going to try not to copy. I'm going to try just to create another kind of a rock area here. Use what I did for inspiration, but just kind of have some fun. But look at the colors that are there. Now all we have to do is just start tossing on some medium grays and lights. So let's just warm this up. Green a little bit, some of this grays. Beautiful, nice, warm grays. Different kinds of grays that can come in here, round down a bit. Use that. Create, see those, you can create the lights with the rocks and then come in with darks and stuff. But after you've created that color movement in there, it's really kind of fun to just make them into rocks now. Use some smaller touches and bigger touches here. Put a little blue into this. Don't paint out all the tone we just put on, but just start shaping them all up, into rocks. And don't forget your violets. Violets are so pretty on the sides. So anytime, you could use violets on shadows and receding planes here. And you can do them light and dark. They're great broken colors, so right up through here would be it's a little bright. If it's a little bright, you can tone it down with a little yellow or even a little green. And see how that grays that right down, see? And so that's a prettier color with the violet there. We can toss some of that into receding planes. And it's just a great little color. But you can get that and start to build that and start to, this is where I get this light. Let's warm this up a bit. And I'll take this into this brush, and this is what I like to do. I like to grab it, push the brush down, and then slowly push the brush flat, and it granulates out. See how it granulates out? Boom. And so what it does is it puts on a nice highlight and then granulates out. That's a stroke I love to use with the little fusion. Then I will break it up a bit sometimes and create a different look. But your rocks up here can have a lot more to them. So let me just say, so I'll touch, I'll push, and then rotate it down, and I granulate it out. Sometimes I'll push-pull a little bit to get, but it puts up a different kind of light, if that makes sense. There. And it puts on a little shimmery kind of thing there. And let's round this one down just a bit more. There we go. That one's coming out of there. And break them up. I have a terrible habit, and it's hard for me to break this. I have a terrible habit of making my rocks all the same size. So, I'll start to break some up with smaller little touches, smaller little colors here. Here, like this. Let's break up some of this one. Break up its size here. I want to get this one more violet right down in here, dark, and then I kill or gray the color with it. Get the violets and then kill or gray the color with some nice burnt siennas. I like that burnt sienna. Kind of warms that dark here. Some different sizes rocks there. There, like that. That's kind of pretty. And break them up. Break up the sizes here. Get some. See, that just goes right through that light color, goes right through that mosaic of color I put on with that palette knife or that painting knife. And it just gives some nice looks. And maybe a little bit of violet right in here. Boom. Break that down there. That's kind of pretty. So they get a bit of the light hit here. There, like that. Builds those all up. And we'll build these up here. And we'll build this one up a bit more. So sometimes, of course, I don't want to use the same stroke all the time. So everything I do is I pick it up and then I just lift it and let it drag off that way too. The fusion is a brush that reacts to your hand. This brush reacts to your hand quite quickly. And so you can get some really by how you manipulate it, push it, touch it, drag it, dragged it, pushed, and then rotate it down, and it granulates out. I love that stroke, but I don't want to use it absolutely everywhere because it will make all my rocks kind of appear the same. So I want to vary it up a bit, and get some nice differences. Let's get some of these nice warm colors in here, because this is out into the sunshine. There. Nice impressionist way of doing it. Yep. But it'll give you some ideas. Hopefully, what I try to do is give you some ideas of maneuvering your brush. And, you know, with this one, we wanted to concentrate a lot on our linear perspective, our atmospheric perspective back through here. You know, and now that I have this, you know, I could see I could do a few more things back up there. And, you know, we could add more up here to the rocks and everything. And I probably would. But you guys get a good idea about where we're going with this and how to do some of that. But you break it all up and you just do the impressions of them. Don't forget, you know, what I like to do is basically in doing these, I come in with a light tone, the shadow tone. I do a lot of the drawing with the shadow tone. And then I'll come in with little intermediate tones, the receding plane, which is right between the two. So you have a light plane, shadow plane, and then a receding plane will be right between the two. And you can use that to add extra little crevices to the rock, like I can tap here like that and give it a little crevice or a little broken area of the rock. The receding tone is quite important, but it can soften off some of your shadows, you know, and give you quite a look. So I could use this receding tone, like right here, to round down the look of this rock here. See, just use that, and it's not quite so sharp. It's a little bit more rounded. And so you can, and so it's a middle value, usually right around a 5 or a 6. And so you can use receding tones to help shadow down any of your other areas, some of your other rocks. Now you don't want to drag it everywhere without changing the tone there, Dave. So put a little violet into that here. Here we go. And just create some of those interests. And I do like to, you know, if I feel like I've got a lot, like I love these couple strokes right there. If I feel like I've got a lot going that way, just taking it and pulling some light strokes. Let's not go quite that light. Pulling some strokes back down the other way, creating a little crevice or something back the other way just a bit. There we go. Set some of that in. And it's kind of fun. But hopefully it gives you some ideas here with that. And of course I do it again. And I'd let this dry up, and then I just drag a little bit of light color here and there. And then I start to balance my colors throughout the whole painting. Like this could go a little bit lighter right up here. I might leave a mark or two, just a little mark or two of detail that helps pull it further forward there. You know, how much more you want to do up through there, that's all up to you. How much it paints, how much it pulls. I do a lot of everything that I do a lot of it through the darks. So I draw with my darks. So even if I want to come up here, let's just take some pine green and some red violet here, a little bit of blue. Nice dark, and we soften it just a bit of burnt sienna. And push in some of those colors right in through here. So if I wanted to add a little bit more to these trees, I do it with the darks more than anything else. The darks are great, but you can create like really great planes of interest. Like I'll take a little bit of a violet blue here and just put a bit of that, and you can negative paint up against the edge of the tree there, but just pull that in, and see that creates a little bit more of a distance between the tree and that area there. And I'll put just a bit of that pulling out on this side there, like that. So that tree is going to come forward here. There, like that. And so carrying colors through, so you can go through and kind of fix them up, and you know, find a few areas maybe you want to have a bit more contrast or a bit more light little touches. Remember, it will dry down, so you know, try to make it a couple values lighter than you think so it dries down. And you get the result that you want. Get a nice little edge here, like that, pulling through. But anyway, that'll give you kind of an idea. Don't need to paint the whole thing here, but yeah, we'll set that all up. That's a good one to leave for studies, for just study those two for my students. That's a good one for them to compare the studies to, and color and movement. I do like that little bit of color in here. Now you can lighten that up more. You know, those of you that really like the light contrast and stuff, you know, like a lot of contrast, you can put more lights into that, and generally, you know, get more contrast. My dogs are asking to go out. They've been so good. They've been here for 3 hours. You've been so good. Yes. So they're wanting to go out. Not quite 3 hours. It's only been 2.5. So anyway, you know, it's all up to you. You know, put more rocky edges, do more little things here, more light if you want more contrast. You know, you can do more stuff. That's all up to you, how much you want to do. That's all up to you, okay? But to give you an idea. So creating it from here, we're doing it with triangles, you know, get those crossing triangles. We're going to do it more with, you know, as we work through this series. The All Prime, I'm going to be painting some prairie scenes with you, clouds, rain clouds, doing all kinds of stuff, and showing you basically working through the atmosphere, how to create the atmosphere to create that kind of that depth into a painting, okay? And that's going to be important, especially on a prairie where we're not going to have a whole lot of these triangles for depth, so we have to do it through atmospheric, you know, more than the triangles. But we'll do that. We got a lot of fun. We got a lot more stuff coming, okay? Don't forget to click like. Don't forget to subscribe to that channel. We really appreciate it, okay? And help us by sharing the channel, telling some of your friends and stuff like that. Hey, go check this out. He's really good. Okay, guys. I'll see you guys on the next one. You have a great time.